AgXcel's GX5 series of hydraulic diaphragm pumps has 4 models. This one is the smallest model that we would call the LFP80. So looking at the pump, you have the PWM block. This is what your hydraulic hoses will go into. You have a motor, and the RPM of the motor will match the RPM of the pump. Not everyone does that. So with this, it gives you the ability to use less hydraulic flow to reach your flow rate compared to other guys that might use a smaller hydraulic motor, so you don't get as high of an RPM. That means you need to use more hydraulic flow to reach the rate that you want to reach. And also, because it doesn't match the RPM of the pump, you don't get the full flow rate out of that pump. So we match the RPM of the motor with the pump. This pump specifically, the LFP80 model, is rated for down to half a gallon per minute, so it can do all your in-furrow rates no problem. It's also rated for up to 18 gallon per minute, which means it can do a lot of your nitrogen rates. Typically, if you're 5 or 6 miles and you're doing 10, 15, maybe 20 gallons per acre, depending on your bar size, this pump would be able to do that for you. So this LFP80 model, it's one of our most popular models of hydraulic pumps we have because it's so versatile in its low rate, and it can go pretty high as well. And then the advantage of it as well, if you're using it for an in-furrow application rate, say if you're just doing 5 miles, 5 gallons, or say if you're high speed doing 5 or 6 gallons, you're still using a really low hydraulic flow rate, maybe only a couple gallons per minute of hydraulic flow to move this pump. Very beneficial, especially on newer planters where if you have downforce, row markers, you gotta lift the planter controls, whatever else you have on there that's using a hydraulic flow, this pump isn't very demanding. We do recommend that you would put it into its own SCV on the tractor, but you don't have to. If you want to run it off the blowers or parallel it off of your downforce or row markers, you can do that as well, no problem. That pump will function fine for you. Looking at the rest of the plumbing on here, whenever we send these pumps out, this would be your inlet. We always have a cap on it just so no debris gets in there in shipping. So we would go into the pump, and then it'll go back into this larger hose. This larger hose will go directly into the pump. And then as we come out of the pump, you'll have this 1-inch hose that will then feed into this adjustable valve here. So by default, we always have this closed whenever it goes out. You can open that locking collar, and then from here you can twist this adjustable valve open. What this does is this is going to send flow back to your inlet side. So if you needed to reach a really low flow rate, or if you needed to lower your pressure, then you could open this up and achieve both of those results. Typically though, we would always say keep this closed and then lock it in. We'll leave it closed for you when you first get it. You will have a bleeder valve that comes with that as well. There's a pressure gauge that will come with all the systems, but this can be put wherever you need to put it. And then we have a few different types of flow meters. They're all magnetic flow meters, but the type of flow meter that we have could be different depending on your scenario that you have. This one is our Orion 3 flow meter. There are several different sizes of them. We like the Orion 3 and the Orion 2 Plus for the hydraulic pump series. The sensor inside has been renewed for nitrogen applications because nitrogen is a high salt. There is a lot of, it can tend to mess with magnetic flow meters. These newer flow meters, they're better at reading those nitrogen fertilizers, so you can really get an accurate flow rate without having to adjust your flow rate from water to some kind of biological to nitrogen, whatever kind of application you're doing. And then this outlet, we can either go into section valves that we can bolt on the pump system, or we can just go out to your manifold, either if it's the GX7 electric row monitor manifold, or if it's some kind of wet boom, or if it's a red ball sight glass manifold, we can run that hose directly to there. So all of our diaphragm pumps are positive displacement pumps. So what that means is for every revolution of that pump, you're going to get the same amount of fertilizer put out. So it's very crucial for an in-furrow application. It's also very beneficial for a nitrogen application as well, even if you're just dumping it on the ground behind the rows, either if it's on a planter, strip till, side dress, whatever it is. So being able, especially when you're in furrow, being able to keep that same concentration per seed of fertilizer, very important. Get an equal emergence of that seed. Looking at the PWM block here, so you would have your inlet hose, which is a 1/2-inch number 8 fitting, same thing with your outlet hose. The PWM block, this will be your solenoid, this would be your override stem. So we always keep it in the down position, meaning that your rate controller that's controlling this pump, it'll act as it should. You tell it what rate you want to lock on in, and then if you're a variable rate application, it'll adjust its rate, no problem. But then you can put it in this override position, And if you wanted to run that pump straight off your hydraulics just by throttling your hydraulics, you could do that as well, say in the case of your liquid controller not working or you have a broken harness, but you need to continue planting for the day, then you can do this and get going. Another benefit of the GX5 series of pumps is that it's very good at pulling liquid. So with these pumps, you can run them dry for a pretty long amount of time before any sort of damage happens with the pump. So now if you run it dry for a long time, hours and hours, what it'll do is it can dry out the diaphragm that's on the inside and it can crack. And then your fertilizer will start mixing with your oil, and then you got to change your diaphragms, and that's a maintenance process. With the diaphragm pump though, because it can run dry for quite a long time, you can put this pump far away from where the tank would be. I've had guys with nose tanks on the tractors have 50 foot of hose where this thing is mounted behind the bulk fill on a pole planter, and be able to pull it within 1 to 2 minutes, depending on how thick that fertilizer is, no problem. So these things, and that's another benefit over the centrifugal pump, is that you can have these mounted above a tank, pretty far away, and they'll still pull no problem, and you can run them dry, no problem at all. So the next size model of the GX5 series of pumps is the LFP 120. This pump is rated for down to 1 gallon per minute and up to 28 gallon per minute. So again, still very capable of doing in-furrow application rates, very capable of doing nitrogen rates as well. A lot of guys might opt to go to a pump like this because it only costs a little bit more than the previous LFP 80 model. And then because you get a higher flow rate out of it, that means you can have a lesser hydraulic usage from this pump. So a lot of guys, if they're already kind of limited on their hydraulic flow, they'll use this pump and they can really save on the hydraulic flow and also still be able to get a higher flow rate out of it. The same benefits still apply. It's a diaphragm pump. You can keep this thing mounted far away from your tank, pull no problem, run it dry. It's real soft on fertilizers like biological fertilizers. A lot of these fertilizer companies, they would recommend using a diaphragm pump over any other kind of pump because it's more gentle on their fertilizer. And also with these diaphragm pumps, you can use a larger mesh filter, like a 30 mesh filter, go through these pumps and be okay. So that's a benefit, again, for the biological guys out there. You can get more of those micronutrients, more of that good stuff down to the row. Looking at the plumbing, very similar plumbing. This would be your inlet here. We cap it, but we also give you the correct fitting you need to run into your hose. We will go into the pump through this larger hose here, into the pump. Out of the pump will be through this rubber hose. And then you'll have that same adjustable valve here with the bleeder valve. You'll have a pressure gauge, and this pressure gauge can be moved to wherever it needs to be. If you have section valves that we would mount on the pump system for you, we'll have it there. It's even easier to see as well. Then we'll come out of the pump into a flow meter, and this is the Orion 3 model flow meter again. It also could be the Orion 2 Plus model flow meter that we'll show you after a bit. Either way, they're all magnetic flow meters. They all read very accurately. So this is our LFP 160 model pump. This one is a 4 diaphragm pump. The 2 previous ones were 3 diaphragm pumps. So this 4-headed diaphragm pump, the plumbing scenario is pretty similar. It's just in a different order to accommodate for the larger pump. This would be our inlet. We'll go into the pump system from here. On this hose, we'll come to our outlet. We have a pressure gauge. We have that same adjustable valve. The hose goes underneath the pump and back into the inlet. You'll have your bleeder valve, and then the rest of this plumbing underneath here will go to the flow meter. This one has the Orion 2 Plus flow meter on it. So this is kind of a familiar look from the flow meters that we've been using for a long time. And then we'll have our outlet here. If you have section valves on the pump, we'll plumb it to the section valves, and then you can run from the section valves to your manifold. Or else if you don't have section valves, like in this scenario, you can just run this over to your manifold. This pump is rated for down to 5 gallon per minute and up to 35 gallon per minute. So it's real popular with a lot of nitrogen rates. Some guys have tried to use it for in-furrow if they want one pump for dual purpose. Say if they're doing high rate nitrogen on like a wide drop bar, and then they want to use this for in-furrow as well. It might be possible, just all depending on your flow rates and then also the size of your toolbar. And then the last pump that we have in the GX5 series is the LFP 250. This pump is rated for down to 5 gallon per minute and up to 55 gallon per minute. So a lot of guys like to use this in the same scenario to where if they're limited in hydraulic flow, they want a larger pump that can put out that flow rate and also use less hydraulic flow. This would be the pump to do it. But also if you're doing really high nitrogen rates, depending on your bar size, maybe 50 plus gallon per acre of nitrogen, this would be the diaphragm pump for you. The plumbing scenario, same as before, you would have your inlet over here. We will go into the pump. This will be the outlet side. You'll have the pressure gauge. You will have that recirculation valve again that goes back to the inlet. Then you will go to your magnetic flow meter. And then out of the magnetic flow meter, we can go to the suction valves mounted on the pump system, or else we can just go out to the manifold that you would have on the bar. The PWM and the motor, it's the same between all the pumps, the exact same part number and model. They're all rated for 550 RPM. The PWM can take up to 10 gallon per minute of hydraulic flow, but it only uses what it needs. So if your demand only needs, say, 3 gallon per minute, 4 gallon per minute of hydraulic flow, that's all it's going to use. So that's another benefit of the PWM pumps that AgXcel offers.